Tape Deck Media.
Ruddle me this, ruddle me that. We got the riddles that'll make you chat. Oh yeah, baseline stuff with groove is tight. Get your funk on, we're rocking tonight. One more time.
Good morning, Ruddle Maniacs. Welcome back to another episode of Ruddle Me This. I am, as always, your host, the Prince of Dorkness, Taylor Ruddle. We are up to episode 76. Where does the time go? We're rapidly closing in on episode 100, and I'm probably going to have some kind of existential crisis when we get there, because that is this may well be the longest running project I have ever managed to commit to. If we reach 100 episodes, that'll be almost 2 years of doing the podcast, I think. So in this episode, I'm going to be joined by Dayvid. Dayvid is a gentleman that I've met through the One Nothing podcast, which you may have listened to my appearance on. Dayvid and Amanda had me on their podcast, and they were just two of the most welcoming, warm, lovely people that I've ever met. So we've sort of rapidly become good friends. The two of them host One Nothing podcast together, and Dayvid also hosts, he runs an Instagram page. He's got other stuff, but the main one that I know him from is the Instagram page. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole, where he just reposts and reshares and curates spooky content. So as you can imagine, a lot of ghosts, a lot of aliens, that sort of thing. I initially brought Dayvid on. I thought we were going to do a 10 Tiny Joys episode, but we just started chatting, and then next thing I knew, we were talking about horror movies and paranormal experiences we've had. We got into a big chat about history and how many dimensions exist, and it was just a really solid chat. And then next thing I knew, the timer was said that we'd been going for about an hour, so we thought, okay, let's just park the Tiny Joys, and we'll just have this as a sort of paranormal chat episode. I haven't got any major plugs to get out of the way this week. I'm just doing my usual Tuesday night quiz at Archie Brothers Holy Moly, Wednesday night quiz at Moi Moi, Tuesday night comedy, of course, at Austin Club, and then Thursday night comedy at Austin Club again. So nothing too exciting, but to be honest, I'm just looking at my calendar now, I've had 1, 2, 3 really, really busy weeks of gigs, which is fantastic. I'm a lot busier than I expected to be in winter, but man, am I tired. I've got, the time of this recording, I've got a massive day tomorrow. I'm hosting a corporate quiz for a tech company. I think I'm doing that from about 4 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And then after that, I've got to leave straight away and head out to Kiwi, where I'm hosting Beats by Bingo there for a couple of hours. So that is going to be a quite a long afternoon for me. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I just hope everything goes to plan and all that. Then the day after, I'm doing another corporate, doing bingo, doing that for a recruitment company, I believe they are. So these will have happened by the time this episode airs. But those look to be... I've got another week. Okay, yeah, I've got another couple of So I'm very busy at the moment, but it's mainly not public stuff. But yeah, so those of you that are supporting the dream of me being a full-time battler, just know that things are going pretty well at the moment, but man, I'm looking forward to a chill week, which is the one coming up now when you're listening to this episode. All right, I have whittled on enough. Let's get down to the brass tacks. Please, Ruddle Maniacs, welcome to the show, Dayvid from Down the Rabbit Hole. Dayvid, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
No, it's honestly my pleasure. You and Amanda have been insanely welcoming to me, so I'm just delighted to hopefully send a bit of that goodwill back your way.
Oh, dude, you're hilarious. We had you on the show. You told a couple of jokes at the end that busted my gut, and I was like, this guy is awesome, man. And I'm impressed because you're doing this. This is your job. This is like, you're not Ubering like me. You're not, out there working a 9 to 5. This is your job, so you must be good. Because
Well,
you know what I'm saying.
I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that compliment. I do definitely have days where I'm like, if I've had I've got this document that I call the highs and lows of showbiz, and it's like if I have a day with that's like particularly good or particularly bad, I'll put notes in of what happened. And there are definitely some days where I've logged a lot of lows, and like we've been rejected by venues, or we've lost a gig or something, and I think to myself, maybe this is when I'm going to have to find a job. But so far it hasn't happened, but that's definitely in the fringes of my mind a lot of the time. So, it is. I don't think there's any shame in artists having a job while they're doing their thing. A lot of comedians in New Zealand think it's like they've like failed or something if they have to work and do stand up, but not at all. I think, you got to make it work in whatever way you can, right?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, that's why I say I'm impressed, because a lot of guys do have that extra job. And like you say, it's not a bad thing. I mean, you got to pay the bills some way, right?
Exactly.
But when you get to the point where you're like killing it and you don't need another job, well, damn, son.
That's
you're doing something right. You're doing something right. That's what I'm saying.
I always use the phrase "living large and scraping by." I think that's quite an accurate representation of my life.
Oh man, you're living large.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm currently waiting for. We might get interrupted. I've got another one of these mics that I'm talking into now, coming from Amazon. I just upgraded my sort of podcasting kit. I've got a multi-track recorder. Had to get some stuff like a battery and an SD card. So the last thing I'm waiting for is another one of these mics, and then I could be a little more mobile, I think, with my recordings. So I have a feeling I'm going to get a knock on the door at some point during this podcast. But enough about me. Let's talk about you, Dayvid. So I would have said this in the introduction, but yeah, Dayvid is a sort of, I guess, what would you call yourself? Would you call yourself a paranormal connoisseur?
I'm an icon, Taylor.
You're the Duke of Darkness, right?
I am the Duke of Darkness.
That's right. And Amanda was the Duchess of Death.
So we were, it's funny about that because, we became fast friends. I mean, right away, I listened to the podcast and I was very impressed with, because I'm not, honestly, before this, I was not a podcast dude. I didn't listen to podcasts. And the one thing I listened to was Joe Rogan. It was like, it's all right. And then I heard her, because at a friend's urging, said, "Hey, listen to this." So I listened to it, and she was talking about, I don't know if you ever heard of Stardust Ranch.
I've heard of it, but I don't quite know what. Is it a cult thing?
It is a spooky ass alien thing. So it's really close to Skinwalker Ranch, which is I've heard of that for sure. And yeah, everyone's heard of that. But when she covered Stardust, I had not heard of that. And I am the Duke of Darkness, my friend. I should know these things, right? Yep. And she went into depth. She got the research down. She had interviews. She, Amanda, she's just the best when it comes to this stuff. I was so enthralled by the story, which was a gentleman named John living there with his wife was getting visited by the Greys, the alien Greys. And they were basically experimenting on his wife and not him.
I think I have heard of this, yeah.
Have you?
I don't know if I've heard it by that name, but this sounds very familiar.
Well, he tried to reason with them that she didn't want to be experimented on, and they would not listen to reason. So he started to go, and he went out and bought some, he bought guns, he bought a sword, he bought, to try to protect his wife. He's going to protect his wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this dude's a pillar of his community. So is his wife. They're professionals in the scientific field, right? And they're very respected. So they didn't talk about this for 2 whole years. Well, he started to attack these things. He killed 19 of them.
Holy shit.
He killed 19 of them. I was freaked out. I was like, how did I not hear this? I don't understand this. So I messaged her and I said, listen, what you did was fantastic. I think it's great. We hit it off from the get-go, right? And became really fast friends and then best friends. And then we talk every single day. And she asked me to to be the first guest. So I'm the first guest of One Nothing Podcast. Yeah. I was the first one, which is really cool. At the time I had 3,000 followers. right, for Down the Rabbit Hole.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought me in for my expertise in paranormal. I'm not an expert. Let me just make sure everyone understands that. I'm not a paranormal expert yet.
Yeah.
But and then she asked me to join, and that's how it happened, man. And it's been fantastic. It's been a roller coaster. I mean, we've seen some success that, quite frankly, I did not expect to see. You know? I mean, to be called the top 3% globally of all podcasts, it's kind of a shocking thing. And you go and look at it, and sure enough, it's real. So I'm really happy with it.
The I'll go back and we can delve into stuff. So you run a page called Down the Rabbit Hole. How long had you been running that before you combined and made the One Nothing podcast? So
I had already been running it it was under a year, essentially. It was under a year. I met Amanda. Like I said, I had about 3,000 followers, maybe less than that. And I was making a name for myself in the community. I've met a lot of people in the community, and the paranormal community is a very tight-knit group of really good people, man. They're good, supportive, helpful people. And as it stands today, in Instagram alone, I've hit 87,300, something like that. And then overall, with all the platforms, Facebook, TikTok, all that, it's about 141,000 followers. Yeah,
that's incredible.
So we've grown pretty good.
That's awesome, man. Well,
we just passed our 2-year birthday. July 21st was our second birthday. So I'm real excited about that.
That's monstrous growth. We were sort of talking about this just in the DMs yesterday. I told you about my idea for a ghost story, the live ghost story show, which to the listeners, if you're in Twizel, keep the 23rd of August free, because that is when I'm looking to do it. So keep an eye on. We'll put some more details out when I've locked everything in. But the like we were saying, the paranormal community it's like surprisingly big. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was telling you that I was following this New Zealand medium. He did a tour of the South Island, and he was selling out these big theaters on like Mondays and Tuesdays. So yeah, people, there's something about the paranormal that, you know, people are into it, eh?
Oh yeah. I'm surprised, you know, all over the world. Like, the United States is my biggest follower list, comes from the United States, but the second one is India.
Really?
Huge.
Wow.
Then it's like Canada, Australia is on the top like 5 list. And the next, I mean, I'm all over the world right now. People love the spooky. They love the creepy. They love to be scared.
Yeah.
And most of all, I think this is like something that is universal, is that we love the things we cannot explain. We can't understand. We don't have an answer for. It's just, it's one of those things that you can meet anyone in the world, and if you tell them your ghost story, they will listen to you because it's interesting. Yeah. Everyone thinks it's interesting. So, you know.
That's a perfect point to jump off, because I was thinking, because you told me a couple sort of briefly over Instagram the other day. So what I thought we could do is you could tell them here, and then because there are some people that only tune into my paranormal podcast. So if you tell me them here, I'll clip them out and chuck them into the paranormal episode as well. So you've had a couple of experiences. I'll just let you go. If you want to share it with us.
Sure. I'll tell you the first one. It's more humorous to me than anything. But I was married at the time, so there's that, right? So I'm not married anymore. I'm divorced. But this is going back to 2004, 2005. I was with my ex-wife. We were at having dinner at her favorite restaurant, and it's an elegant restaurant, right? It's an elegant Mexican restaurant in San Antonio. And we're having dinner indoors, and the place is kind of packed, right? I'm enjoying what I'm having. I can't even remember what it was, but there were like 3 tables away in my eye line was a table of a man and a woman and their son, who must have been between 10 and 13 years old. And, you know, I'm just having a good time with my ex-wife. We're just talking. And then I catch in my eye line this young man looking at me. Right? He's just looking at me at first. And I'm like, okay, he's just no big deal, right? He's never seen a Hispanic, apparently. I don't know what's going on. Okay, whatever. And yes, he was white. And so he's looking at me and he starts to look startled. He's scared, right? And I can see this. I'm like, oh shit, what's happening here? I don't know what's going on. Then I hear him say something, but it's so loud in the restaurant. There's so many people chattering and all this noise, right? But he's saying something and his parents are like gesturing to him like, no, it's okay. Then he starts to say it again. And it seems like it's getting louder because I can almost hear what he's saying. And he starts to point directly at me, right? And I'm like, oh shit. Then he's getting scared. You can see him like frightened. And then I could hear what he was actually saying. He kept saying over and over again, it's the devil. It's the devil. And he started to get louder and louder. And I swear to you, when it got to the point where everyone could hear him, it got quiet in that restaurant. It got real quiet. His parents, his dad is like fumbling through his wallet, trying to get money out to throw it on the table so they can get the hell out of there, right? And this whole time, and the wife is picking him up, like telling him to come. He's still screaming, it's the devil. It's the devil. He's right there. And I'm like, to me, it was funny, man. I was like, this kid thinks I'm the devil, man. I don't know what's going on. So finally he's gone and you can still hear him as he's going out. I'm like, wow. I look at my ex-wife and I'm like, what the hell was that? And she's like, I don't know. You're the devil, apparently. She said, and I'm like laughing to myself. And then I notice that there's no noise in the restaurant. And when I look around, everyone is looking at me in this weird accusatory way, like I did something to that kid, or possibly I was the devil at that moment. And I just think that, to me, that was like, I'll never forget that. Never. He probably was like, something was wrong with him, or he had some sort of mental issue or something, but he thought I was the devil.
Wow.
So for that night, the devil was in San Antonio, Texas, my friend.
Throwing up the horned hand and stuff as you're paying your check, and or you just look down and you've got like an AC/DC t-shirt on. You're like, oh crap, probably shouldn't have worn this. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I told that story to everyone I knew at the time because I was freaked out by it. It was very strange.
That must have been so surreal because that feels like a scene out of a movie, like.
Oh yeah,
like the what is the kid, Damien or whatever, that kind of
yes.
Yeah. And then you told me another one about a ghost that you encountered. Did you want to tell that one too? Yeah, please.
Definitely. Go ahead. So, and there's a little backstory to this. Two things happened that day. Two very bizarre things happened that day. One is there was a fire in the apartment above mine. So I was on the first floor. There was a fire going off in the second floor. I had no idea, but it was blazing. And I'm sitting there on my chair watching TV. I have my dog, Charlie. She's a little Chihuahua mix. She has her own Instagram account, by the way. She has over 3,000 followers, which is funny to me. So we're sitting there watching TV, and it was around 4-ish on a Sunday. I'll never forget this. And it was like towards the end of October, 20-something, right? So we're sitting there, and I'm really exhausted the day before. I don't know what I did, but I stayed up really, really late. I was really tired, and I thought, I'm going to take a nap. I should take a nap. It's like 4:30-ish, and I'm thinking, the logical part of my brain is like, no, don't do that, because you work tomorrow morning, and if you take a nap now, you're going to screw up your whole night, and you're going to suffer tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. So I decided not to. And here's what's bizarre. So I don't know how you feel about like decisions you make. Like you made the decision to be a comedian straight up, right? There's another universe where you didn't.
Oh yeah, I love these conversations.
You went to the left and you didn't go to the right where you are now, right?
Yeah.
So what happened to that dude who didn't? What is he doing now, right? There was a decision I made not to take a nap. But I think in another universe, I decided to take a nap. And here's the bizarre shit about this is that I have a memory. So there was glass breaking from upstairs and the fire was raging out. I have a memory from when I was sleeping and waking up and hearing that glass break. It woke me up and I just ignored it, went back to sleep. And I have a memory of hearing it while I was watching TV and going to see what was going on. Two distinct memories. The weird part about that, just to cut to the chase, is that when the firefighters got there, they told me that if you had stayed 10 more minutes in that place, you would have died. Smoke inhalation. It would have killed you for sure.
Wow.
So the dude that took a nap did not make it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I have a lot of, I feel like something happened in that moment where I was either pushed to the side or just, I don't, something really weird happened because I have differences now from that point. There's some very distinct differences. For example, I had rheumatoid arthritis before, really bad to the point where at some points I couldn't even get out of bed. It hurt so badly that I couldn't walk. It was both in my hips, my knees, my ankles. I had costochondritis in my chest, sometimes my shoulder. It was horrendous. I could not. It didn't matter if I sat down, I laid down, I stood up, I was in pain. But when it would pass, when it would go away, I would feel better. When it was cold, that's when it hurt the most. When it was warm, I was all right. So after that date, that went away. It's gone. I don't have that anymore.
Wow.
Which I can't explain why I don't have that anymore. But I have not had it since then. But I have something in its place that I didn't have before. And it's called ankylosing spondylitis.
Oh, I've heard of that.
So you heard of that? Okay. So I was 5'7.5", close to 5'8", right? I'm 5'5" now.
Whoa.
So how did I shrink? I don't know. But one of the explanations from my doctor is from the condition that I have in my spine, it's basically the vertebrae are fusing together. And so it's like crunching out the discs, which it's shrinking me essentially. I didn't have that before. I never had that. Why do I have that now? It doesn't hurt, which is a bonus.
Yeah.
The arthritis hurt like hell, dude.
Yeah.
This doesn't hurt, but I miss being taller. I can tell the difference, like almost immediately, like the curbs on the road, like the side where you step off a curb, it seems bigger for some reason. It seems like more of a chore than before. It's just like a step. It's like you're going down a step. It's no big deal. Now it's like, are they bigger? What the hell's going on? So many things like this happen. Okay. I can't explain it. I don't have any proof to prove to you this is what's going on. It's just what I think. I have something in the back of my neck that it was a little like a thumbprint back here that I had afterwards, and I didn't know what it was. And I went to the doctors and they're like, I don't know what it is. Let's take a test. It's inconclusive. They don't know what it is. Oh. So now, since that day to now, it is grown almost to the size of my hand back here. They still don't know what it is. It's just like hell. And I don't know what it's, eventually it's going to take over my whole body. I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know what it is. And I need to go back because this thing is getting out of control. I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and
it was like when you said thumbprint, it was like a mark on the back of your neck?
It was like a mark, yeah. And I remember like touching it and it felt like gills. It felt like these 3 lines across from up to bottom. And I was like, holy shit, am I becoming a fish? What is this? What is going on? It still has that consistency, but I don't know, dude. It looks like a burn. It looks like a 3rd-degree burn is what it looks like.
Whoa.
And the one other thing I'll tell you about what's happened since then to now is I remember the smell of the fire originally smelled to me like barbecue. And I live in Texas, right? So barbecue is normal here. And it's a way of life. And so I thought, oh, someone's barbecuing. Okay, no big deal. Then I noticed it started to become like a little chemical smell to it. And that's when this man was like banging on the door. Hey, there's a fire. And so I got out. To this day, almost daily, I can smell smoke. And it's that smoke that I smell. But it's like phantom, like there's no smoke anywhere. There's no fire anywhere. Yeah. When it originally started, I would tell my girlfriend like, hey, something's burning. Like, we got to figure this out. And so I would run to the kitchen to see if the oven's on or the stove is on. Nothing. There's no fire outside. It's just me. I smell it.
Yeah.
And it bothers the hell out of me because now I'm used to it. I know it's not real.
Yeah. But
it makes me wonder, like, if there's an actual fire, am I going to think it's fake? Am I going to think it's just in my head or something? So the second part of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll tell it afterwards. Yeah.
So that night I had nowhere to stay. And, so I was in the office of this apartment complex and they were saying, we're going to get the Red Cross here. They're going to put you up at our hotel, this and that. I was like, cool. My sister called me and said, don't go to hotel, stay with me. I said, all right. I really wish I didn't, but I did. I went and stayed at her house. She had a guest bedroom. And this is where the experience came into play. And I think they're connected, Taylor, in some weird way, Taylor, excuse me. I think they're connected because I never really had an experience like this before. And so I go to her guest bedroom. She also there's a bed there. She has like crafts and stuff. That's her craft room also. Her and her son, Max, my nephew, he was around 3 or 4 at the time. So I go in there, go to sleep. Me and Charlie are falling asleep. And then I start to hear a tap on the wall, like a 3 taps, 3 taps. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'm a skeptic by nature. I try to explain things away, and which is really bizarre when, I'm deep in the paranormal. But I was like, what is causing this? There's a ceiling fan going. She's got papers like on the wall with a thumbtack, right? So I'm looking around and I hear it. And then I notice that like when the fan is going, one of the papers kind of comes out a little bit and taps itself on the wall. And so my brain's like, that's it. Good night. Go to sleep. Right. So as soon as I explained it, I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't worried that some ghost was tapping or whatever. So go to sleep. And that night, somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, someone is like, I'm sleeping on my right side and my little dog is right here. And I feel a little hand grab my shoulder. And my sister is 5 foot. She's little. So I figured it was her waking me up, right? Like something's going on. And I feel her shaking me and I'm waking up and I still feel it. And I'm awake and I look and there's no one there. Shaking my arm, there's nothing there. And I look, the door is still closed and locked and there's no one in the room. And it stops. And I'm fully awake because that shouldn't be happening. What just happened, right? And then I heard what sounded like footsteps because she had like a wood floor or whatever. And it sounded like someone was shuffling from in front of me to the other side of the bed with socks on. That's what it sounded like. Someone was shuffling around. And I was like, what the hell is that, dude? What? And as I'm saying that in my mind, as I'm experiencing this, like trying to explain it in my head, I hear a little boy laugh from that direction. And let me tell you something. I'm a man. All right, Taylor, I'm a man. You know what I'm saying? And instantly I covered myself with my covers because I was like, I'm not dealing with this shit. No. Even Charlie was quiet. She was, I think, a little freaked out too. And I heard the shuffling a few more times, but I didn't hear the laughter anymore. And I don't know how long I was awake, but I was awake for quite some time trying to process what happened. Trying to figure out, is this my nephew? What is going on? No, the door is locked. He's not in here. What the fuck? And, I had such a trying day that eventually I fell asleep, which I was like, oh, this is interesting. You would think something like this would have you running to the hills, right? And you would, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't. I stayed there and I actually fell asleep. Once it stopped, everything stopped. And the next morning I go into the kitchen and to the table there. And I'm having coffee with my sister. And I said, I got to tell you something weird happened to me last night. And she said, oh, you experienced it too? It's like, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You knew something was going on in there. You didn't tell me. She was like, yeah, mom and dad said they heard some weird stuff in there. And every once in a while when I'm in there, stuff will be knocked off the shelf and I'll pick it up. I'll put it back on the shelf and it'll be knocked down again. And I can't explain what's going on in there, but something weird. And also Max, her son, her 3-4-year-old son at the time, he has this imaginary friend, right? He calls him Coco. He's been talking. I hear him having conversations with, and I'll walk in there and I was like, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to Coco. So she thought, well, it's an imaginary friend, obviously. But then Coco started to scare the shit out of Max, terrifying him. He would run screaming from the room from whatever Coco showed him. Yeah. For the longest time, my poor nephew, we couldn't take him to like a Halloween shop or anything because he would see those things and he would freak out. He couldn't do it. Yeah. Something happened in that house, man. I can't explain it. They no longer live there. Yeah. It is bizarre. Wow. And I kind of want to go back and do some like investigations.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
It's interesting how often they cross over with imaginary friend / ghost, or maybe they think the ghost is an imaginary friend, and that's super common, isn't it?
It is, and it's so freaking weird. I'll tell you, when my sister moved into this house,
Mm-hmm.
the owner of the house actually had the same name as my mom.
Oh.
And she told my sister, listen, I have to be honest with you. I have to be square with you. Anyone who moves into this house, whether they're married or they're together or whatever it is, end up getting a divorce or breaking up before they leave. And my sister was like, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Her and her husband had a really good relationship. They were very close, and they had a son. Everything was great. But when they moved in that house, something changed in her ex-husband, because he's an ex now. They actually broke up before they left.
Yeah.
He was, as a matter of fact, when I was there, because he's kind of like, he's a big guy, but he's real quiet.
Yeah.
And he's very kind and sweet, a wonderful guy. But when he was living in that house, he was an asshole. I don't know if I can say this on your show or not, but he was an asshole.
Away. Yeah, no problem.
He was different. He was not normal, man. He was, and he let me know he didn't want me there. He let me know. So I stayed a couple of nights and I was gone.
Yeah.
But he, that it wasn't him. He was a different dude. They ended up getting a divorce, and now they raise Max together, but they do it like he's normal again. Like as soon as he left, he was okay. He's a good guy. They work really well. They as a parenting duo, even though they're divorced. He's married to someone else now, and so yeah, man, I don't know.
That
Something
feels
was
like
up with that house.
It's a pretty common. I think they fairly common thing that happens is like spirits kind of latch on to one person and amplify negative traits. So that sounds like something like that might have happened. I was going to say as well, your turning point kind of timeline bit that you were saying before, I was going to interject with something. I just watched the show called The Lazarus Project, which is about time travel. And
I listened to your episode of explaining that.
Oh, awesome. Well, so okay.
Yeah.
So for those that didn't, basically the Lazarus Project, they can reset time, and most people forget when it happens. But if you take the serum, you remember all of the things that happened, even if they loop back in time. And then what happens is when you first get injected, you have this sudden rush of memories and stuff that was all the things that you experienced in these time loops, but you didn't remember it. And so, I don't know, like what happened to you maybe feels like, because you're smelling the burning. So, are you familiar with Game of Thrones?
Yes.
So you remember the character?
Game of Thrones.
This is a big spoiler for anyone listening, but it's a fairly old show now. But you remember how Hodor, when he got like his death, basically, people theorized that he had kind of been experiencing his death for his whole life in this sort of parallel thing, because I can't remember exactly what happened. Bran took him over, but he took him over in the past or something, or taking him over in the present also took him over in the past, and he was kind of experiencing his death simultaneously. So I wonder if maybe that happened to you as like the Dayvid that didn't, or the Dayvid that took a nap was in the fire, and then so when you made that decision, you had this kind of flashpoint thing where a lot of stuff from this alternate version of Dayvid kind of, I don't know, latched onto you, or you've got some kind of, it's like a sort of ancestral memory thing going on. So maybe that's you're experiencing bits and pieces all disjointed from this like other version of you. Well,
I mean, that's a very good description. I can tell you that ever since this has happened to me, I've been developing these theories. Like I'm trying to explain what happened.
Yeah.
One of my theories is I believe now that every second you've ever lived, you've died. From birth, even before that, all the way to whatever the last, year of your life. So every moment, any moment in time, you have died.
But it's like a sort of in an alternate branching kind of universe.
Yes.
Like even right now, there could be a universe where a plane falls out of the sky and lands on either of us. That kind of thing,
Absolutely.
right? So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that, and because if you're talking infinite universes. You're talking about every possibility.
Yeah, exactly. If it's infinite,
could ever
it must
happen.
be.
It's infinite. It has to be. And if that's true, that means you've died in every possible second you've lived here. So what's been happening is I can actually see, if that's true, moments where I may have perished.
Yeah.
I think that was one for sure.
Yeah.
That was the wrong decision to make, was to take a nap, because this apartment, the bedroom's all the way in the back.
Yeah.
And the front door's like, it's a very long kind of apartment. And I would not have been able to hear that guy banging on the door. You know, the glass breaking was closer to where I was at, but no, man, I wouldn't have woken up, and then I would have been there for that 10 minutes extra. And as a matter of fact, I think that whatever I was burned pretty badly, because there were holes in my ceiling from the fire above, like massive holes where things came crashing down. Yeah. And was on fire and stuff. There was like 4 or 5 fire trucks that got there, and they wet the hell out of that place. And I got to go and see it afterwards. Yeah. And there's no way I would have survived had that happened.
Yeah. So that sounds like quite a good movie or something, to be honest. The idea that we're like, the versions of us that are talking now are just the ones that have happened to have made the right branching choices at times. And maybe that's the plot of the movie, is you could see a big chart of your life and all the branching points, and you can kind of see where you are, and then you look ahead slightly and you go, oh wait, this comes to an end pretty soon, or something.
I'm saying, when I started to realize, could this happen? Is this what happened? Is this why I remember this? I started to I can see points in my life now where I've made a decision and it was a good one. Or, you made a decision and it wasn't so good. It didn't lead to your death, but it led to something that wasn't great. Yeah. I can say 2 years ago, this month, I was thinking about creating Down the Rabbit Hole. Because it's a passion of mine. The paranormal is a passion of mine, and I kept wanting to do it, and I never put the time to do it. And then I got fired from my job. I had a job where I was a manager of an IT, and I was let go. And so the very next day I made it. And I remember the thought I had when I was creating it. It was, don't do this. That's what was telling me. My mind was saying, you're not going to get anyone. No one's going to look at it. No one's going to care about what you put out there. Yeah. You're going to get bored with it, and you're just going to give up on it like you do everything. That was the little voice in my head telling me don't. And I ignored that fucking voice. Yeah. And I did it anyway. And then I not only did it, but I worked on it every single day for 2 straight years, man. I never got a break. I worked 7 days a week on it. Every single morning, I'm hunting for videos that I would want to watch. And that has made all the difference. You know? Had I listened to that voice, where would I be right now?
I wonder. You'd probably be, I imagine you would have found another job and then sort of continued on ad nauseum. But I don't think I have the negative inner voice telling me not to do stuff. So I've never been able to really experience imposter syndrome or anything like that.
Good man.
But good on you for ignoring it. I was going to say, you're, I guess, like, the answer is probably you're figuring it out as you go, but I guess, do you have any plans for what you would like to turn this community or this kind of following you've got with Down the Rabbit Hole? Are you planning on turning it into a show, or have you got a movie that you're going to fund, or I don't know, just what are your thoughts on where you're going to take it?
So I do want to create a show, because I do get a lot of like followers that will message me and tell me that happened to me, or they'll say this happened to me, and I'll ask them, so tell me, let's hear it. What happened? Tell me. And so I've heard some stories, Taylor, that would freak you out. There's some stories out there that sound like movies, that sound like the most horrific thing you've ever heard. And I just thought, what I can do is I can interview these people, right? and make a show out of it. You know,
Yeah.
like something from down the rabbit hole. You know, this is a real experience.
Yeah.
Let's talk to you, and then we'll start discussing what happened to them. You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of something I've been talking. I told Amanda about a while back, and she thinks it's a good idea. She's like, "I'll support you in any way," and like, I want to do that. I want to do a YouTube show about that, and that's one of the things, right? And I used to be a writer. Like that was I had a creative side where I would come up with just the craziest stuff, and I never really like. I would just write and stop. I could never finish anything for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I would like to get back into that because I think I still have it. I still got it. You know, it's still there.
The comeback kid.
So I have to, I got to do it. And that's another thing I would like to do. I think I can, like, I saw this movie called Long Legs.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. I've not watched it yet, but I've heard it's quite good.
Yes. No.
Not good?
Oh. Like and I don't want to give any spoilers here, but
yeah.
it was billed as the scariest movie
I've heard
for
that,
the summer.
Yeah.
I was sold on the trailer. The trailer sold me. They threw out the Silence of the Lambs out there. You know, I'm a huge Silence of the Lambs fan.
Great movie.
This movie did not measure up at all. I was not scared.
Yeah.
There was no jump scares, which I'm not a fan of jump scares, but I mean, give me something, dude.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing the cinematography was great. The cinematography was fantastic. That was, and then there's a guy in there. Oh my God, what is his name? Blair Underwood, I think his name is. He's an actor. He was good. He was good in there. The other actors were not great. They were not great. The writing was not great. Nicolas Cage, who I happen to like, made me laugh. I wasn't scared by anything.
Yeah.
He was cracking me up in the movie, man. And I didn't go there to laugh.
Yeah.
You know, they're supposed to scare me. So I was very disappointed in that. I think
shame.
I could have written a better movie than that. I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it. So I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. Why
I'm going
not?
to give it a shot.
Sorry to interrupt the show, but I gotta be a shill for a second. I'm historically bad at self-promotion, but it's one of those things I need to get better at, so here goes. If you like what I do and want to support me going forward, here's how. The main thing you can do if you want to help this podcast grow is to tell people about it, share my posts and reels on social media, and of course, leave a cheeky review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. In terms of social media, here's where to follow me. My tag on everything is @Taylor Ruddle Comedy. Follow me on Facebook or Insta to see all upcoming gigs and live dates. Follow me on YouTube, TikTok, or Insta to see reels of the podcast as well as skits and stand-up clips. I've also got 2 free comedy specials up on my YouTube page as well, with plans to release another 2 full-length ones by the end of the year, so give me a subscribe so you don't miss out. Once a month I host a podcast called Hosstown with my friend and comedic colleague Matt Lilly. It's a light-hearted take on modern masculinity as the two of us try to strike a balance between being scholars and cavemen with plenty of belly laughs along the way. Hosstown is eventually going to have its own feed on the Tape Deck Media Network, but for now, the easiest thing to do is to search Hosstown Podcast into YouTube, where you can watch the full videos of the full episodes. We release them all for free up on there. You can, of course, catch me live all over Christchurch with quizzes, musical bingo, and of course comedy nights. Go and follow my Facebook page to keep up to date with those. I've also got a survey running at the moment so that I can find out what people do and don't like about the podcast. Visit taylorruddle.com/podcast to have your say. It really helps me out. I'll chuck a link in the show notes to that. Thank you for indulging me. That's all the shilling out of the way. Let's get back to the show. Do you want to hear I was talking to one of the bar staff at a quiz I was hosting last night about this. I'm sure it's not an idea unique to me, but you would be familiar with, I think it was Carl Sagan, his little, not a documentary, but he did a little explanation of the difference between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions with his little flat land. You would have seen that, right?
I think so. I think I've heard of this, yeah.
The gist of it was like, if we as 3D creatures are looking at a flat, just the only dimensions they can go are X and Y, so I guess up and across. And if you're looking at a square in Flatland, we could, if you're looking at the side of the square, we're essentially looking at its insides, right? So you could poke it and mess around with its insides. And if it was a living creature, it would just be like, what the hell is going on? And so I heard a description saying that a 4-dimensional creature would be that to us, where a locked room to a 3-dimensional creature might not necessarily be locked to a 4-dimensional creature, and it could just as easily mess around with our insides, and you would never see the 4-dimensional creature in its entirety, because we don't have this extra direction that it needs to exist and whatever, but you would see weird chunks of it that appear in 3 dimensions. So some kind of 4D monster, I think, would be really scary, because you would have that Jaws effect of never seeing, because you remember that movie was so scary because you never completely saw the shark. So you'd have that, which is quite nice. And then also that's just terrifying to think that like you're kind of never safe. You don't know where it could get you from. So that would be, if I was ever going to write a horror movie, I think it would be a 4-dimensional creature.
Let's write it together, my brother.
Yeah. Yeah, let's put it together.
So, that it's fascinating, but they say that if you were in the fourth dimension, and you can basically see the 3rd dimension through the shadow of the 4th dimensional creature. Mm-hmm. So, it would appear as a 3-dimensional thing. So, like if you see a shadow of a 3-dimensional being, it looks 2-dimensional because it's flat.
Of course. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that's I've been studying this stuff. It's so fascinating to me.
That's right.
And
so we would see a 3-dimensional shadow, but they can also, I think the way that the Flatland analogy worked is like if you passed your hand through Flatland, they would just see chunks of your hand, whatever chunk was sort of sitting in Flatland at the time. So in that same sense, we would just see weird disjointed, body parts and stuff.
Right.
But you would also see the shadow. I never thought of the shadow. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me freak you out a little bit here.
Please.
One of the things that scares me the most, and I do not ever want, I definitely want to see a ghost. I want to see that. That's a bucket list item. I want to see a cryptid. I'd love to see Bigfoot. I'd love to see.
I'd love to meet Bigfoot.
Alien. Love to see an alien up close, a ship. I want to see a landing. I want to see all that stuff. The one thing I don't want to see is a shadow person.
Really?
Those things freak me out. Now think about this.
Yeah.
The shadow person, if you see a shadow person, it looks 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
Because I believe shadow people are interdimensional beings.
So we're
seeing
from
a higher dimension.
So we're seeing the shadow.
Being.
Yeah. Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is really creepy.
And there's this friend of mine out there, Brian Bowden. He's a great guy. He came up with a theory that he believes they are interdimensional, and that they feed off the energy that we put out. So, for example, their goal is to scare us.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if they scare us, we give off this energy. It's fear.
Yeah.
And they feed off that stuff. It's like energy for them. So, if you ever come across one of those things, and it's like blacker than black, these things are 3-dimensional shadows that are blacker than black. Yeah. And you're supposed to run after it if you see one. Show it that you're not scared. Yes. Ooh. You're supposed to get out of here. Yeah. Get out of here. Because if you get scared, then they get what they're there for, and they're going to keep coming back and scaring you.
Of course.
So you need to chase them out. So he had that, and he chased it away, and it's never been back since. So, I mean, 4th dimension, my friend. Yeah,
that would be another cool thought I had, like the image in my head of how it would play out and how it would kind of look like if you were, if let's say we were kind of a 4-dimensional being and you had a dollhouse in front of you. Let's just say for the sake of this that all of the creatures living in the dollhouse looked like a human hand. As a 4th dimensional creature, you can actually reach your hand in, and it could pretend to be a hand and interact with the rest of them. And they could only maybe see the chunk of you that was in the dollhouse at the time. So I thought that could be a really scary reveal for this 4-dimensional creature, as a person that you think is just a normal person just something, you just see a little blip of something else, like maybe the thing leaned in too far and a little bit more of its arm showed than it was meant to or something. Like they just have this weird thing on the back of their head for a second and you're like, oh, okay, that's just the hand of another, that idea terrifies me. It's almost like an anglerfish, you know, those things that they put that light out and then if you try to eat it, they like suddenly appear and envelop you.
Yeah. Those things, the theory is just, I love it so much, the whole dimensions. And there's several other dimensions above that.
Yeah.
And science claims that there are 11 total dimensions. And without these dimensions, the universe would collapse. So they're necessity, right? These dimensions are necessity.
Yeah.
Other people have said there are many more dimensions than that. But imagine fourth dimension, like we've been discussing.
Yeah.
Going up another dimension. And then going up yet to the sixth. So the higher you go, these beings are able to do more things. For example, you get to the fifth dimension, you're able to go back in time and change something.
Right.
So
yeah.
So time is different there. It's not the same as it. So you can actually go back to a point. Let's say my marriage, for example. So the moment I got married or whatever, I didn't like this. So I'm going to go back before that and change that and not marry that person. So now I'm living a whole different timeline, but this one still exists.
Yeah.
The marriage is still there, but I'm living in a whole different timeline. I chose to be here.
Yeah.
I can never go back again to that original one. It's gone. Okay.
Oh,
but it exists. So isn't that weird? It just blows my mind.
Because they seem to reckon that perhaps time is the fourth or fifth dimension because it's not a direction we can move in, but it is a way of, it is still a direction that things can move. So they, by that logic, a 4-dimensional creature could go back in time. But it wouldn't be like going back in time for them. It would just be like walking across a room or something, right?
I don't think, this is just my opinion.
Neither of us are scientists.
The fourth dimension is not time. It couldn't work that way. It's just the way we perceive time varies on these other dimensional planes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So,
because I think Interstellar tried to show us what 4D would look like. Yeah. Didn't it? Yeah.
So that's actually was a pretty good. We can't see it. It's just we just cannot see it.
Yeah.
You've heard of like say a cube.
Yeah.
You know what a cube is in the fourth dimension, right?
It's the cube inside the cube, isn't it?
It's called a tesseract.
Tesseract, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were able to see what it looks like, it's like a cube over a cube that is constantly moving.
Yeah.
And there's that, like you had mentioned, the hands where like the other hands are popping out.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. So it's constantly moving. You're just seeing this thing that exists, but we can't actually see it. We can pretend to see it. There are these little VR things that'll show us what it might look like.
Yeah.
But we can't actually see it because we're not equipped.
Yeah.
We couldn't use our body and go to the fourth dimension. We would not survive because the way sound waves work, the way everything works is different. It's not the same.
Because we are literally 3-dimensional creatures. We don't have, you couldn't even perceive it, even if you could. Yeah. So this got like super scientific.
The higher you go to the 6th and the 7th and 8th. Now you can go back several times and live several different lives at the same time. And the higher you go, you can actually go back and revisit one of your timelines.
Yeah.
And just go through it. Time is just totally different in these levels,
Yeah.
Then you get to the 11th, and that is the godlike stage. That's where it's like you can do whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. You can go and create different universes. You can do all sorts of stuff on that level. It's a godlike level.
Yeah.
And I just find it fascinating.
Are you much into history at all?
I love history. Yeah, it's one of my favorite rabbit holes. I love it.
If you could, I have a few in my mind that I would love to, if you could just sort of go back and even just be a kind of fly on the wall and see certain things from history happening. Do you have any moments you'd love to go back to and see, just be there when it happened?
Oh man, there's so many, but I'll tell you one that, So I have, and down the rabbit hole, I have subscriptions, and we have a group chat in this subscription, and it's available now. It's $2.99 if you want to join up. We have these discussions, and one of them is I told the story of the English war hero that during World War II, where it was kind of over, like the war was kind of winding up. World War One. I'm sorry, it was World War One. It was like they were on the battlefield. He was in a foxhole, and he saw a German soldier kind of walking through the fog, who seemed disoriented, didn't know where he was at, and so he took aim on this man, right? And he could have easily killed him. He has killed so many Germans, and so he was thinking to himself, this is like, it's nearly over. I'm not going to kill this man.
Yeah.
He looked to his left to see if anyone was watching. He looked to his right. No one was watching. Had someone watched, he would have pulled the trigger, but he didn't. He lowered his weapon, and the German looked at him and realized he's not going to die. So he turned around and took off. That German was Adolf Hitler.
Oh, wow.
I would love to see that moment.
Yeah.
Just to see it.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Because the dude could have saved us from World War II, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe it would have went a different way, and they would have had a competent leader, and that guy would have taken over the world. Who knows, right?
True.
But I would love to see that. I would love to see, I would love to go back in time, because there's a lot of theories that aliens were here before we were.
Yeah, yeah.
I would love to see if that's real. So I would love to go back in time to see
cool.
that.
I saw years ago a theory that it was aliens have visited Earth, and it was like based on some cave paintings they'd seen that seemed to imply that there was another planet that was on like a oval loop, and while it was close enough, they could sort of jump between these two planets, but because the planet was orbiting in an oval, this was like every 10,000 years or something like that. And so they had this kind of cool idea that we were from another planet, but we just haven't seen the planet in our lifetime again since. I suspect probably not scientifically accurate. I don't know if an oval orbit is possible, but I always liked that story.
I love it. You can write that story, Taylor. You can write it.
Imagine that, two planets that are at war, but like only for the 1,000 years that they're actually close enough to send troops to each other's planet, and then they go back into peacetime again. And yeah, you can do a lot with that idea, couldn't you?
It would be fun. Yeah, it would be fun.
One historical thing that I'd love to go back and see is you would have heard the Greek philosopher, I think it's Dionysus,
Diarrhea?
No, not quite. It's like Diogenes, Diog.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about.
The one that spoke to Alexander the Great and told him to get out of the sun. Have you heard that one?
I don't think so. He told him to get out of the sun because he was going to...
I'll just quickly make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Diogenes?
Diogenes, okay.
Diogenes, yeah. And so there's this famous exchange where what I love about these old philosophers is like a lot of them were essentially just homeless guys that like would say something really wise every now and then, and for the most part they were just hanging out in the street and drinking wine, and they weren't really up to a lot. But Diogenes will say, I apologize to any Greeks if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but there's this famous story where Alexander the Great had heard that he was this really witty and this great philosopher, because Alexander, one of his sort of reputations was that he was this philosopher king, and so he went and visited Diogenes, and he basically said to him, if there's one favor I could do for you, I'm Alexander the Great, what could I do for you? And Diogenes just looked up at him and said, can you get out of the sun? Because he was sunbathing. And so as Alexander walked off, he was laughing with his friend. There was guards and his friends, and he just said, if I were not Alexander, I would have wished to be Diogenes. And then Diogenes said something to the effect of me too to him. And just, I would have loved to have seen that moment happen.
That is cool. Yeah.
It would have been, imagine just being, you're just a peasant or whatever on the street, and you just looking over and seeing that happening. I think that would be, I don't know. I just think it'd be a cool moment to witness.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Can you, to see not only that, like not just the moment, but to see if Diogenes was actually just a bum.
Yeah, yeah.
Just walking around drinking,
Yeah.
not giving a shit.
Yeah,
Said
exactly.
something really wise, and that was remembered forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that's wow.
I remember looking at, just reading about a day in the life of what a sort of middle-class Roman child would have been like, and it seemed pretty chill. Like, they would wake up, they'd go to the bathhouses, then they would go to like their equivalent of school, which would have essentially just been being taught by a philosopher, and wax about philosophy for a bit, and then go back to the house. And it seemed like a very just a real chill existence. Just thinking about stuff. The obviously the dark side of that is you can only operate a society like that with the warmongering and slavery that the Romans did. But
which is why they failed. It crashed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Did you ever hear the story about the wanting to make the slaves wear a particular kind of uniform?
No.
So I think it might have been Octavian. One of the emperors suggested that they make the slaves all wear a uniform so they were easily recognizable. But then they were like, wait a second. If all the slaves can immediately tell another slave like that, they're going to realize how much they outnumber us by. And so they didn't do it.
Octavian was my favorite. He was the first one.
Me too.
He was Augustus, right?
Yes,
he changed his name to Augustus. And that's where we get the month August from.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
July we get from Julius because he dedicated that to his uncle.
Yeah.
So we're in the month of Julius Caesar, essentially.
We are indeed. That's another thing. I would love to go back and just see the Roman Senate like in its kind of heyday when they were having their kind of, their I don't know what they were called, the meetings, for lack of a better word.
Right. Ugh. Yeah. The birth of corruption.
We're not helping the stereotype that men think about the Roman Empire 10 times a day, or whatever that meme was. So I find
it fascinating, man.
Yeah.
The Romans were fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Nero, for example, that dude's nuts.
Caesar?
Nero is kind of nuts. And there was making a horse. Was that the one, or was it Caligula that made a horse a senator or something?
Yeah, I don't remember which one of those two it was, but I think Caligula might have been the older one, whereas Nero, I feel like, was the crazy boy emperor that I think a lot of characters like Joffrey from Game of Thrones are sort of partially inspired by. I could be getting this wrong. It sounds right to me, but I don't know.
Man, some crazy stuff, man.
So we were planning on doing Tiny Joys, but we've basically filled an hour just talking about paranormal and whatnot. So maybe we park that and we'll bring you back on another episode to talk about your joys. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, let's kind of wrap it up there. That's coming up just nicely in an hour. So Dayvid, thanks so much for joining me. This has been an absolute delight. The time flew by.
Thank you, Taylor, man. It's great. I think you and I, we're on the same wavelength, and so I really enjoyed it, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So we'll get your plugs in. Where can the listeners check out like kind of more of what you're up to? One Nothing Podcast is obviously the one that people might be most immediately familiar with. That's one I was a guest on. That's just at One Nothing Podcast on all the platforms, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
I chucked the
links. You can find us. We're everywhere as far as where you get your podcast. You'll find us there. Mm-hmm. Down the Rabbit Hole. Just search Down the Rabbit Hole on Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube.
For those who don't know what that is, you just kind of post and you sort of curate and post paranormal and sort of creepy videos.
Yes. So I will post any video that I feel deserves has worthiness. It's not always real. Keep in mind, but if it's creepy and scary and makes the hairs on my neck stand up, I'm going to post that.
Hell yeah. That's basically been my approach. I don't know how much of a believer I am in certain paranormal things, but I love a scary story more than anything.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I look forward to seeing you do some more content where your personality is at the forefront, like of Down the Rabbit Hole is it's cool stuff, but I feel like people would really connect to you as a person if you're sort of presenting these things almost like one of those early web shows where they had like a host and they would kind of cut to paranormal clips and
You're Rod Sterling, right? Hey,
yeah, exactly.
Twilight Zone.
But yeah, I look forward to it, man, and I'll be watching whatever you get up to.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Ruddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Ruddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind the scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddle her out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.